Today's message is a little different than normal. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the church, where we've been and where I see us going this year and where I hope you personally will go and will journey with your faith. Today is not really any particular day other than Super Bowl Sunday, but it's just the day we decided to talk about this. And it's on this theme of grace upon grace, which you've seen a lot if you've been coming to board meetings. It's kind of the theme I've been thinking through for the last couple months and will throughout this whole year. I have been here for 3.5 years, which is amazing to think about, but I was looking at pictures of my family, and when I got here, my youngest son was as old as John and Amber's oldest son, a little 4-year-old at the time, was just in pre-K, and so now now he is in anything but pre-K and is arguing with me about all sorts of things. So time moves. But in those past 3.5 years, I've been really thinking about it and looked just back to the last three, just to kind of give it a cutoff and think of what has happened since around January in 2023. And I thought, well, when I looked at it, I realized, oh, a lot has happened since January 2023. Here's just a few of the things. For example, we started our RISE program, which is our 4th and 5th graders, and that's something that has grown. And in this coming week, they have a retreat where they've actually gotten the similar programs. We've invited other churches, other Methodist churches from around, and they're all going on a retreat. I think there's almost, if not already, there will soon be more than 50 kids coming to that. And so that's a real victory for us. But I'm really happy that we not only saw that as something that we are doing, but have expanded that to some of the churches around us. We have seen in really big and wonderful changes in our day school. We've added classrooms. It's grown in size. We have a new director there, Amber Garcia, and I'm just really excited about all of the things that it's doing. Our Wednesday Night Live. Now, you know that Wednesday Night Live has had a lot of different incarnations, even in these last 3 years. But for the last 3 semesters, that's still how I think in a lot of ways. We've settled on this dinner, and last week we kind of started back, and it was a full house, great soup, and it just seems like it's just become a thing. It's part of our week, and I love it. And then we've got new small groups. We started new Sunday school classes. We started new small groups of all sorts of things, disciple, all sorts of new small groups. That includes also, I think, a real growth and emphasis again in Emmaus. And a lot of these things, they started back, but those of you that have been coming to the church know that they weren't really new to these they just things that kind of broke down during the pandemic that we brought back or expanded. New impact, I think, particularly of all that Hannah's doing over through the Haberman House, but also just a lot of ways this church has helped the community through special offerings like Kerrville this last year, but in so many different places. Donation drives, what you're doing this year with Super Bowl Sunday. Fellowship, we've had to create a game room at our church because we have so many game groups coming, and I love that, actually. I think that's really important. We've got pickleball here. We've got all sorts of things that have started up, just ways of being in community with one another. And we've increased our care teams a lot. I love our mobile communion groups that are going out, and we've also just found out that we might be going to or we've been invited to come into a senior living community that we don't believe we have anybody there. It's just going there to share the gospel and to share the ministry there. And so I'm really excited about that, and our First Feeds ministry and our circuit riders, all these care groups that have started or come back after kind of going dormant. I'm just really excited about it. It's been a lot, and that's just basically what I could think of last night when I was putting together the slideshow. But when you look also at it, you can see that a lot has changed. There's been a lot of change in the last three years. You just can look around this sanctuary and see a lot of change that we've done, from screens and to sound to lighting, all sorts of things. But it's also been a lot of new people. If you look at the numbers of people attending the church in January in 2023, you would say that we've about 1 out of 3 people are new since that time, which is a lot of new people. We've got about 93 new people that have joined the church, 5 times the amount of kids on Sunday. Now, I should say that we had almost no kids on Sundays, so you can 5 times from a small number you can get to, but it's been great to see that ministry really growing. About twice the amount of youth are involved now than were involved in January of that time. Our GAP program is, as you all know, very near to my heart, but I talked to Diane, and it seems like it's just bigger every single time we talk, and it's over 560 kids now, I believe, which is it's a approach. It's 7-8% or so of the entire school district. This church is feeding, which is really incredible. And then we've had about 30 baptisms and about 54 professions of faith, which that's a Methodist metric, which basically means when people join the church that did not go to church or really have a church in their life before. So that's actually a really solid number of our people who have joined or not joining from other Methodist churches, for example. And so it's exciting. God has really blessed a lot of good direction from us. We've had a lot going on. But busy does not mean we're doing what we are called to do. When I was in a gathering for church leaders about 10 years ago, we were talking with a consultant, and he worked with the denomination, but also other denominations. And someone asked him essentially, what's wrong with the Methodist Church? Just tell us what we're doing wrong. And he said, well, what you're facing, almost all denominations are facing. Churches in general are facing. There are, of course, very large churches, but the vast majority of churches are very small and shrinking, right? And so he said, you should know that first. But he said, if I was going to say one thing that characterizes most of the Methodist churches I work with, what I see to be the problem, he said, you're very busy, but you don't know why. I see some nods. You're very busy, but you don't know why. And we are a busy church, and so the question is why, right? Why are we busy? Now, to be honest, a lot of times churches are busy, and the reason why is because that's what we did before. So why are you doing a ministry? Well, we did that last year. Or why are we doing it? Well, we did it back before. Not always a lot of ideas about what it is you're trying to do right now, what your focus is. So you become very busy, but you don't always know why. He said, you just don't have a sense of strategy. Now, for the last few years, I have been trying, and our staff have been trying to kind of put a framework around all of the busyness here. What is it that we are trying to do? And particularly I want to thank Amber Lujan, who has really helped crystallize this message and put it all over places. But what we have settled on is really taking the great commandments of Jesus, this idea of loving God and loving our neighbor as ourselves, and the Great Commission, which he gives us to make disciples. And so the language we've been using, and you've seen it all over the church, has been to love God, love people, and make disciples. That's been our focus. But that really is just a distillation of what I would say the Methodist mission is. The United Methodist Church has a mission, a why statement, and that's this, to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Now, churches all over the world, in all different denominations and non-denominations, are all united in our faith in Christ, our belief that Christ saves, but there is a difference in emphasis in different kinds of churches. This is the Methodist emphasis, and that doesn't mean that other emphases are wrong, but some churches would say we exist here to, make sure we can get as many people into heaven as possible, right? So saving souls and getting people to pray the sinner's prayer or something may be a mission for a church. Or they may say, what we really want to do is we want to have the most amount of people on Sunday. That's our mission. But for us, it's been to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world, which shows a Methodist emphasis on two things. One is that there needs to be inner transformation, that we become a disciple, we follow Christ. It's an inner holiness, a desire to model our life after Christ for the transformation of the world, for this social holiness, so that it is not just us, but everybody. When Methodist movement began, it was such that when a Methodist church was in town, or Methodists were gathering, the expectation, the language that they used, particularly in America, is they said, we're here to beat back the devil. That's how they saw it. When we come, when Methodists start to gather, things are going to start to change. Think about all the Methodist institutions that started from that. Methodist hospitals, Methodist schools, Methodist orphanages. That's all from this idea that Methodists had, that when Methodists start to gather, the world needs to start being transformed. Kids that were hungry need to not be hungry. Poverty needs to be fought. Lives need to be changed. People need to be cleaning up their lives. People need to be coming closer to Christ. People need to be learning of the gospel and the salvation that is found in Jesus Christ. That there should be a difference when a Methodist church comes to town. In the hearts and in the lives of people even that don't come to the church. So we have this mission to make disciples, to live out that call to live as Christ told us to live, where we love God and love people. But yet it's not always easy, right? The delta, so to speak, between the lofty goal and the feeling I think churches often get into about busyness without a deep sense of why. Every once in a while, I'll have an encounter with somebody who might come up to me and say, hey, can you spare some change or something like that? And I'll usually go through a set of different things. On the one hand, I'll remember when I worked in homeless ministries, and one of the things that they tell you is don't give money. Partly because of how many folks you're working with, but also for lots of different reasons I don't need to get into here. On the other hand, I always think of Jesus saying, give alms to all who ask. And I feel conflicted in my heart. But these days, often I think, well, I don't really even have any change. I don't carry money anymore. I don't got anything left to give you. Have you ever just sort of felt like I don't got anything left to give? I think a lot of churches and Christians can feel that way. They'll see this lofty call that is on us, this mission that Christ has given us. But they'll think to themselves, I don't have what it takes to be part of that. In churches, often they'll think to themselves like, hey, we want to do this, but we'll do that, but we're not big enough to do that. That's a big one. I've served some really small churches, and they just have said, we don't have enough people to take those kinds of things on. Or they might say, we're too busy in our lives to do this. Or we're too old to do this. Or whatever. But for whatever reason that we have, we'll figure out how we're disqualified from being part of this mission. of making disciples for the transformation of the world, of loving God and loving people and making disciples. We'll say to ourselves that if we could, we would if we could, but not right now, right? We don't got any change at the moment, but we never do. But isn't it interesting how different Jesus operated than that? Sometimes when you read the Bible, it's such a familiar story that you have to almost think of the counterfactual, like what didn't happen, to see the importance of what did happen. What I mean by that is that the fact that Jesus was born to a poor family in Galilee, it's such a familiar thing that it's worth wondering, like, why? Wouldn't it have been a whole lot better if God had just been incarnated like the Roman emperor? Could have done a lot of good real fast with all that money, right? All that power. Sometimes I wonder if that's not a little bit of the point, right? That when Jesus called the disciples, he's calling fishermen and saying, you're just fishermen. You're nothing special. You have nothing in your pockets. You don't have anything that would say, this is the reason why I should be a person who should take this mission on. You don't have any reason other than one, I've called you. And you have to decide. Will you follow me or won't you? It's the question. Will we follow him or won't we? He didn't care how much we've got in our pockets. So will you follow me or won't you? I can understand why we might not want to. It's overwhelming to think about. And I mean that at every level. It's overwhelming in our personal lives. We're so wrapped up, and all of us are, on all of the things, the weights, the brokenness, the darkness. I am, you are, we all are. We all have a laundry list of reasons. But maybe that's also something that the Bible is so familiar with that we can forget. You know that passage in John where it says, Jesus, the light shined in the darkness did not overcome it? It's right around this same exact verse, this first part here in John where Jesus is compared to a light, and it's powerful to see that this darkness is there. The Bible knows it's there. It knows why we would not want to follow God, but it says this light is shining, and that when there is light, there's a decision. Do you go to the light or do you stay in darkness? But it is that light that is the light of Christ, that is that grace. And the decision we have is to live from that grace. That grace upon grace. Here's my hope. I hope that light switches on.
I hope that you have inside of you this change in you that says all of a sudden that I'm going to be part of this light, that I want this light in my life, that this is who I am. I want to answer this call that Jesus Christ has placed on me. And that when you answer it, and you answer it, and you answer it, and you answer it, and you answer it, that when we answer it, well, it is grace upon grace, light upon light. And when your light falters, others' lights can shine and show you the way. I thought a lot about what to talk about, and part of me wanted to just kind of lay out church programs for the next year. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it's not about that, is it? There's no church program, no exciting sermon series, no music program that can switch on that light. I can't do it. Julie can't do it. It's not the faith of your neighbor. It's not the faith of your spouse. It's not the faith of your children, or the faith of your parents. It's your faith. And this is a light that comes from God. It's you that has to surrender to it. It's you that has to decide to follow Christ. There's only you can make this decision to live from this grace. And because it is all grace upon grace, it must begin there. Now, I do believe that we have an exciting year ahead of us. And I have thought of kind of three ways three terms that are at least guiding principles for me about what I'd like to see us do and how I'd like to see us live out this grace upon grace. And those words are, they're easy. It's just deep, simple, and impactful. I want us to be a church that's willing to go deep. And so that means willing to go to be able to go into the places and into the conversations and into our lives in areas that are not easy all the time. Because I'm hoping and praying that as other of us learn that we might think that we are not people that the light can shine in, that we may think that we are people that cannot follow Christ, but we need to go deep. And so whether it's in the exile class that I have or in the sermons that we're planning on doing or whatever it is that I'm seeking and asking myself, how can we push towards that light? But it isn't just kind of going deeper in faith. There's also a realization that we have started a lot of new things. And in many ways, I am just seeking to go deeper in what we are doing. To double down on the places where we see the light being turned on. To ask ourselves, where is God going? And doubling on that. I also, of course, as you know, am a basketball fan, and so I think of it in terms of going deep into your bench. If you know anything about basketball, you'll know that sometimes some teams only play a few players, but some teams go deep into their bench, meaning they're going to play everybody, and that's my goal here too. Because church is not a thing, right? It's not a place. It's almost a verb. And if you want this transformation in your life, if you want to follow Christ, that the only way to do it is to start walking. You have to do it. And so as a church, we want to be a place where we are all able to do this. That it isn't just the light of a few, but the light of everybody. So we want to go deep. And we want it to be simple. And so that means that we need to have some idea of what we're doing and a sense of strategy and mission. And so we're going to be looking at that kind of a vision process this year of really saying, look, a lot has changed. A lot of new people are here, but what do we want to do? How do we want to proceed in the next few years? And that's not a decision I'm going to make or a small group of people are going to make. It's going to be a decision that is going to be made by this larger group here in a lot of ways. Oh, where are we going? And simplify how we're doing things and what we're doing so that it is easier to partake, to become a part of things. It's easier to understand what's going on. It's easier for us to figure out what is what and where and what we need to do. So we want to simplify. But we also want to simplify from almost a spiritual point of view. It's going to be of no surprise to anyone in this room that I overthink almost everything in my life. You can find me a lot of times crouched over my desk trying to figure it out. It's just who I am. But every once in a while, God will just remind me of the simple path. The next step. Surrender today. Pray for strength now. Follow Christ in this moment. I think he's calling us into that same kind of thing today. There is so much we can't control. But there is this simple faith. And then finally, I think of it in terms of being impactful. I always think of those church questions that pastors are taught to ask, and one of them is if your church closed its doors, would anyone notice? That's one of the things they ask you to think about. And a corollary I will ask myself is, if your church closed your doors, would your members notice in terms of spiritually? Or would they kind of carry on the way they were? And in some sense, what's the impact in people's lives and in their heart and on the city? Now, I got to say, at this church, I have felt very strongly that if we closed our doors, people would notice. There'd be kids that are hungry. There'd be people that are not helped. And I think if we closed our doors, you would notice, because a lot of you live your faith and your life out here, and this is a place of deep strength for you. So one reason I love to be this church is I feel like yes is the answer to both of those. And yet, we shouldn't forget what is that question. It's how are we making an impact? So this year, that's a big thing I'm thinking. Are you, in 2027, do you look back and say, I moved closer to Christ in 2026? I lived in a lot of fear, and yet I have come over that. Or do you look back and say, God has helped me through these times. I learned to surrender to God more. I learned to have faith in God more. I learned to trust God more. I learned to live out a purpose. I found that even though I didn't think I had anything to give, I had a lot to give. Do you find that out? Is that what happens? Is that impact made on your life? Is it different? Or is there no impact at all? So I want us to be an impactful place. That guides a lot of what I'm thinking. But you know, it isn't me that's going to make that stuff happen, right? It's the Holy Spirit. It is grace upon grace. And it is also the fact that it is all of us together. One of the things that I love about our church is that how active and involved people are. But this church will become what God is calling if we all answer it. And so I'll remind you a little bit about that. And some of you probably got, I didn't bring one up. There's a little booklet that's been going around. And our hope is that you'll take a look at that and bring that back. And I'll go through that in just a second. Next week, we'll start accepting them, but you can bring them back later. And if you're online, there's online forms, and we'll be mailing them out as well. But the basic idea here is about commitment. So when you become a Methodist, when you join a Methodist church, you commit to several things. You commit to prayers, praying for the church and for each other, for the mission. And remember what prayer is, right? It's not just only saying, hey, God, can you help me in this way? It's also, in many ways, aligning our hearts with where God's will is. Presence, and that is showing up. That can be coming to worship, but it's just showing up and being a part of it. It's one of those things where you may not realize this, that you may wake up in the morning and go, I don't feel like I need to go to church, but you being in church may be what somebody else needs. It may be your light that shines that day and helps someone else see the light. Or it may simply be that you may just be saying, God, I want to show up because I want to follow you today. And I don't know how I am. I may not feel like it today, but you are a God of surprises. You're a God who does things on my heart. And I can't tell you how many times people tell me, I didn't want to come to church today, but something told me I did. And then I came to church today and I needed it. It's a commitment. Now, financial gifts is a huge part. I'm not going to mince that. That's a big part. Almost everything here is possible through that. You can find more information at our board meetings about specifics in this little packet, which I tried to break down by taking things like salaries and building expenses and splitting them across to give you some sense of like where a dollar goes to support. And it's just indirect ministry. There isn't a lot of overhead here at the church. And I believe in that ministry. I believe in what we're doing here. I do think we're an impactful church. I do think we're a church that is going in the right direction, and I do believe that supporting this church through all of these things is a way to live out your calling. When we look also at just not just financially, but in serving, we had that great ministry expo, and it was cool to see people out and about seeing all the different things that are happening at the church. But it happens because you make it happen. And I got to tell you, in the last year or two, I have seen so much more of this. And it's so exciting to me. Because that tells me that you are feeling the grace and feeling like maybe I have more to give than I thought I did. We're going to have a lot of volunteers for VBS. And our VBS keeps on growing. And I guarantee some of those people are going to sign up and saying, I don't know if I really want to do this. But they're going to have fun. And more importantly, kids are going to come hear and learn about a God of love that they may not have ever met. And then when we talk about witness, and this is an important thing, that, sometimes Methodists, we don't like to think about this or talk about it, but I'm not talking about knocking on people's doors, but what I am talking about is saying, hey, this is what I live my life for. I live my life to follow Christ. I have a purpose. I have a mission. I have a plan. I know my Lord. I know where I'm going. I know what I'm about. Guides my decisions. And I know a grace. And when you live that out, changes things. You know what I want? It's going to sound silly, but this is what I'm hoping. I said before, church is sort of a verb, something you do. Well, you all know that I lost weight, but what you may not know is that I've been trying to work out, okay? But I'm not really good at it. But the other day, my wife said, I can tell you're working out. And I felt so happy. I was like, yes. Now I wonder, what if, someone would say, I can tell you're going to church. Where are you going to church, right? I can tell that something has changed in you. Something has shifted in you. I don't know why, but I used to see this person who was just focused on what couldn't happen and what was broken and what problems they saw. And here I'm starting to see someone of faith and hope and love and joy. What has happened to you? Why are you different? Where have you found the light? You see, it comes not from a place of brokenness or scared or defense or line in the sand or all of the things that we seem in our culture and in our lives to kind of go to. But where change and transformation really happens is from fullness, from the grace that God has given, from coming from that place of love and extending that love, from coming from that place of grace and giving grace, from coming from that place of peace and extending peace. It comes when we are transformed and we can transform. It is and always has been just about grace. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.